Okay. Alright, so what we'll quickly go through in preparation for next week are the energy efficiency aspects and environmental building in general. So the important things for energy efficiency are your solar access, so getting and managing that solar access correctly. We want to get plenty of sun into a building during winter time, but no or very little sun in direct sun in summertime. We also want to get a lot of it coming from the north. We don't really want it coming from the east and the west, particularly if it's in summertime. We don't want large windows facing west that have lots of sun pouring in. That's a fantastic way to heat up a building when we don't want it. So it's about planning that solar access. Also, another very important thing, something we're very blessed with in South Australia, is cooling breezes in the evening that come off the ocean from the southwest, and that's an important aspect for us to consider with housing as well. I think particularly with a site like Shepherds Hill Road, Bellevue Heights, that gully faces southwest, the gully out the back of that faces southwest, so you get those gully breezes up through there. And a quick look on Willy Weather here. Where are we? Willy Weather. Looking at, so is everybody here familiar with windroses? Seen windroses before? No. So yeah. So they didn't used to be that available, but now you've got them. You know, for I guess everybody's used Willy Weather before, have they? Everyone's cool with that or not? No, right. Okay, well, yeah, sorry, assume that because I use it a lot because I have to look at winds and things like that for knowing when I'm sheeting up roofs or not sheeting up roofs. And so, yeah, Willy Weather is a great resource for wind prediction, rainfall, all that type of stuff. And so you just put in put in Bellevue Heights there, and I've got the current wind at the moment. So currently, gentle winds, 8.5 kilometres an hour, 22 kilometres an hour gusts. It's all pretty gentle, pretty decent throughout the rest of the week. I guess up to 40 k's there predicted. So that's it's a bit up there. So don't want to be shitting up the roof probably late in the afternoon tomorrow or midday. But so that's our sort of daily stuff, and you've got, of course, your general weather, your rainfall, so on, tides if you wish. But down here you've got your annual windrose. That windrose shows the predominant direction of wind, and you'll see these lighter green portions. They are the lighter gusts. So if we've got sections that are made up of lots of these lighter colours, they're great areas to think about having our cross-flow ventilation, because you don't want massive gusts through the house, but you want cooling breezes coming through. So from the northeast, we've got a lot of those lighter breezes coming through, and only a little bit of the gale force wind and the strong winds. With our southwest, we do have a lot of that gale force wind, strong wind there, but that's also where we get our cooling evening breezes from. So looking at that, I think probably if we were thinking about cross-flow ventilation through the house, being able to open the house up, having doors at both those ends to get the breezes through is a good idea, facing in that direction if we can.
So that's a 5-year average, is it?
That's a 5-year average.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is there somewhere where you can see like what months of the year it's worse? And
You can. Not on Willy Weather. I've gotten those previously. Adelaide Airport puts them out. So yeah, so the airports typically, because they're measuring wind all the time, they put those out, and so I've got them previously for Adelaide Airport. I haven't ever got them specifically for a location. They might be possible to have a look around for that on Google.
Using that rose on the client brief, they want to have a deck to make the best of their westerly view.
Yes. Yep.
Now that would be
Yeah, that's,
the worst direction for them to have a window, according to that.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. West. Well, yeah. There's not a lot
Guess
of
you'd
not
make a
a great deal of
recommendation.
cooling breezes and things through there. Yeah. Have a think about that during the week. I'll be your client next week, and we can chat about those sort of things. So we've got to think about solar access. Got to think about that cross flow ventilation, because if you can open up a house in the evening, get it all cooled down, that's fantastic. Thermal mass is a very important thing to consider in designing for energy efficiency. Embodied energy is also important.
What do you mean by
guess,
that?
So
Yes.
embodied energy, that relates to the amount of energy that's required to produce something. So that's the total amount. So for this pen, maybe 50 kilojoules of energy to make up this plastic, plus the cost of getting that, this amount of oil from wherever it comes, Saudi Arabia or whatever, and then where it's manufactured in China, then through to me. So that total supply chain energy that's involved in producing that, plus the energy in producing those materials, making those materials do what they do. So in building, your embodied energy of rubble is simply the amount of energy it takes to crush the rock to rubble and transport it to site. But your embodied energy of concrete, for example, is the cost of that for your aggregate, that for your sand, but then also the cement, the energy that goes into baking the cement. There's a lot of energy in that. In glass, it's the total amount of energy to bring all the stuff from Penrice or wherever, and then heat that up, melt that into glass, and then move it around. Things like aluminium have really high embodied energy, so it takes a lot of electricity to make aluminium. But things like timber, very low embodied energy. It's about that's basically about transport. So that's all of your embodied energy. Insulation, how we insulate buildings. That's fairly straightforward. Glazing, where our glazing sits in regards to our solar access, and how our glazing performs in regards to that solar access. So we've got solar heat gain coefficient, so you can have glass that reflects a lot of the solar heat that comes in. You've also got various different insulation aspects of glazing as well. You can have glass that's low E glass, so it doesn't let as much heat through it, or you can have your standard plate glass, which just lets a lot of heat through it, or you do double glazing with argon filled that lets less heat through it, but then argon filled double glazing with low E glass that's even less through it. So, and you can determine the R value of your glass the same way you can determine the R value of your walls. And the R value is about that resistance. And also water storage and treatment. That's fairly straightforward. Water you're catching, you're going to keep it on site and use it on site, or you've got to pump water out of the marine, treat it and use it. Or that wastewater, are you going to have an aerated septic, use that again on your site? Be efficient with that. That sort of stuff is fairly straightforward, and that's really just about whether the client wants that infrastructure on their land and whether they want to pay that money.
60 years ago, they never used to take any of that into account, did they? Any of this sort of stuff?
Yeah, they did. Certainly these two things were very important.
Yeah.
I find it amazing. I spent some time in Iran, in some desert cities there, and there's some amazing architecture there that's built to work really well with the climate. That you can be in there because they have some stinging hot days there. It's really hot, and yet the houses are really comfortable because they use shading correctly. They design houses around this sort of quadrant, so they'll use that part of the house for this season, that part of the house, etc. But also really thick mud brick walls, and also these things called cooling towers that collect light breezes as they come through on the windward side, drive them down under the house into the cellar, and that air comes up through the floor, and then the cooling tower sucks the warm air out the top of the room on the leeward side of that cooling tower. So it's providing cross-flow ventilation essentially, or ventilation, but it's also ventilating, like taking the heat out and adding cool air from the cellar into the house. So, and they were building those, those cities there. They started building those 2,000 years ago, and thinking about all those sorts of things. So a lot of this stuff has been around, and something that's a really common architectural feature in South Australia is the Dutch gable. That came from South Africa, when they had ventilated rooftops. But we've sort of lost the idea of that. A lot of the Dutch gables are faux things. They're not actually ventilated roof space. But that's before the advent of air conditioning. Once you could have air conditioning and cheap power, like we used to have, well then you think, why do we need to design this stuff in? We can just put an air conditioner in. So a lot of what was old is new again in that respect. So then, but it's we sort of lost a lot of that.
Would be good, wouldn't it?
What's that?
The thermal mass of mud brick would be fairly efficient.
Yeah. So thermal mass, that's a blessing and a curse, as are many of these types of things. So exactly. So
double brick and it's freezing in winter, and by 4 o'clock on a hot day, it's an oven. And I went into a house that was built, with this very much in mind. Embodied energy, they made it out of rammed earth. The thing is, rammed earth doesn't have any good insulation capacity. That was before the insulation requirements in the NCC. And it was freezing cold, like early in the mornings. I wasn't there in summertime, but I imagine it was stinking hot in summertime as well. So it's, about getting new air conditioning.
So it's about understanding all of these aspects and how they work in concert with each other. So it's not just about one thing. Although one thing you can look at alone is solar access. So you think, okay, do we have good solar access or not? Is it doing the right thing? And we'll quickly have a look at that. So it's in general design principles, passive design principles, so far. And so all these materials are there for you all to learn. So for Adelaide, latitude south of 27.5 degrees. This is your good rule of thumb for shading. Your eaves width should be 45% of the height from the other side of your eave to the bottom of your window. So I think we've got a worked example of that on the next page. So with this one, 900 window with 300 head height, so let's say it's only 2400 high ceiling in the top there. So we've got the height from the base there is 1200, so the eave width should be 450 to match that. We extend that, down to being a 1200 window, well then that increases our eave width to I think 600. So that's our general principles. Now with the living areas, 2100 high, 5-hole doors or whatever, we need an eave width or shading of 1080. So 1.08 metres. That's to ensure that in winter time we get a maximum amount of sun in, but in summertime during the midday, so summertime is our 78 degrees there, our maximum angle, it's completely shaded. We don't only have to think about shading in the height of summer, we also have to think about it pretty much from March through to October. We don't really want a lot of sun coming to the house, October through to March. So, so things start heating up, then getting a bit warm then. So it's about extending it not just for summer solstice, but beyond that. And if the orientation of your windows is true north, well then it makes it very easy for that. Once you start going past 30 degrees either way, well then it is problematic. But also in thinking about solar, and then that's about having shading extend past your windows as well, which is just as important. Louvers can certainly
certainly help, will be very beneficial in allowing winter sun to pass through, but no summer sun. Also, we've got to think about vegetation and solar access as well. So deciduous trees that lose their leaves during winter, are fantastic to have on the northern side of the house, or even on the western and eastern side of the house. So during summertime they provide plenty of shade there, but then during the winter time they don't have their leaves on there and the sun can get through. Also, if you can't get it right through the other things, then various different mechanical options. So eaves, awnings, and roller shutters. Roller shutters are fantastic for building bushfire prone areas as well.
What's that?
Because then you don't have windows that have the capacity to break
No, that's
and
what I was thinking about.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So to just close your house, it gives you a significant level of security. So this is about cross flow ventilation. And thinking about that. But the point I was making about these various different aspects, how they have to work in concert. With your solar access, yes, if you get that right, well then thermal mass is not so much of an issue. You can have lots of, so the thermal mass is a benefit. Because if you get that right, well then you get the heat into your building when you want it, and you don't have it when you don't want it, and then thermal mass is a real blessing. If you don't get this right, well then thermal mass is a curse. Also, if you don't get that right, but you have lots of thermal mass and lots of insulation, well then thermal mass is a real curse. So, or if you may get that part right also, but then you have lots of thermal mass but no insulation as well, you can have a very poorly performing building. So it's about thinking about how those things work in concert. If your thermal mass is a curse, that can be offset to a degree by cross-flow ventilation. However, if you have a lightweight building that's well shaded, well then, and it has good cross-flow ventilation, well then you don't really need so much of that thermal mass as well. So it's about thinking about how they can work in concert together. Also, another way of cooling buildings, we don't really do this in South Australia, but you notice this in two-storey houses anyhow, that you do get the heat rising up. And another thing we don't typically do in Australia is use different rooms for different seasons, but they do that elsewhere, and that works well in that context. So wintertime, lots are living up here, summertime, lots are living down here. But we can also use this to our benefit to think about how that happens by hot air rising and cold air sinking. You can also use plants for cooling, so provide passive air conditioning essentially. Do that. That's it for that. We've already had a quick look at climate zones and what climate we're in. In Adelaide, it's not too bad, and at Bellevue Heights, there, climate zone 5, it's not particularly cold. It's and not particularly hot in summer. So warm temperate, it's pretty agreeable. But in different areas, we think certainly about different aspects to making the house comfortable. Because that's what energy efficiency is about. It's all about making the house comfortable, which means you don't have to put much energy into the heating and cooling of it. insulation, it's important to think about how much room we have for insulation. Because yes, lots of insulation is fantastic, particularly if you get the other things right. But you are limited by that. You are particularly with a standard pitched roof with a flat ceiling. It's easy to get lots of insulation in there. If your client wants a raked ceiling, well then that's very difficult to get that amount of insulation in there. So with our bulk insulation, for an R value of 4 or 5, which is typically what we have to get into our ceilings, we're 195 to 215 millimeters loft of that insulation. And whenever insulation has to be installed, or when you design for that insulation, you're not allowed to squash the insulation down. If you're squashing that insulation down, well then it doesn't meet its R value, and so it won't meet the National Construction Code, and various different sisolation bats, etc. for additional insulation value per thickness. Beyond that, there are also higher, or materials that have a higher K value, so more insulation per their thickness. So they're called PIR foams typically. We've got a table in here for some of these. No, we don't. I think the other Kingsdown brochure.
You're looking for the R value for the thickness?
Yes.
There was a table.
Oh, there was? Was it up, was it? Up, down. Let's go too quickly. So,
25 mil.
yeah, 25 mil thick, 2.3 or 40 mil thick, R3. So two of those together gives you an R value of 6, but it's only 80 mil thick. So much better insulation, but far more expensive as well. And so that's a consideration for your client. And get rid of that. So another thing we quickly get up is so different building materials have different thermal masses as well, and so we can think about how we want to use that. So it's important to think about how we want to use that thermal mass in a building, and think about what materials we want to use where. I guess has everybody in this room heard of reverse brick veneer?
Is that when the timber frame's on the outside and the brick's on the inside?
Yes,
Yeah, I build a house like that.
Yeah. And so the reason for that is you put the material with the high thermal mass on the inside of the building, because that's where you want to regulate temperature. And then the insulation goes on the outside of that thermal mass, and then your cladding goes on the outside of that insulation. That's that sort of principle in a nutshell. But you don't always have to achieve. You don't have to do an expensive build like reverse brick veneer to achieve that same sort of thing. What you can do is have your slab, and then if the rest of your house is well insulated and you get plenty of sunlight onto that slab, you gain the benefit of that thermal mass as well. So different materials have different capacity for storage of heat, so kilojoules. These ones are, this is per kilogram, not per cubic meter. Was that one per cubic meter? Yeah, but per kilogram anyhow. So water is very high. So 4,200 kilojoules per cubic meter. Stone is significantly less than that, and brick, concrete, etc. or all around the same. We've also got a similar table, and we've got, you know, the same for gypsum plaster as it is for stone and concrete. But you also have to think about the thickness of the material, the actual cubic meters of that material that you're using in the building. Typically, we'll use a lot of cubic meters of concrete, but we'll use very few cubic meters of gypsum plaster. So although although it's got a thermal mass which is the same as concrete, we typically only apply it in 10 mil sheets, and so there's no great thermal mass in that. And same with fibre cement sheet as well. That's got a very high thermal mass, but a 6 mil sheet or 9 mil sheet, etc. To find a quick table on our different glasses. No, because we have to go through this fairly quickly as well. We have a read through this at home. But in a nutshell, when we're talking about glazing, so I spoke about the low E glass, which stops heat transferring through. And you've got glass which is low SHGC, which stops heat coming in. But in some aspects you might want high SHGC glass on your northern aspect. So you want lots of solar heat gain, but if you've got any on the west or the east, you want low SHGC glass. Beyond that, there is also the issue with the transmitting of heat through your frames as well. So timber frames are very insulative. They don't transmit very much heat, but aluminium frames will transmit lots of heat. What you can do is have aluminium frames with a thermal break. That is where you have a section of frame, say section of frame like that, and then it's got this plastic type bit spacer, and then we've got our other piece of frame in there that our glass is in. So this component here that's inside the building doesn't touch the outside of the building. This bit, we might have a bit of plastic stuff in there. This bit that touches the outside of the building doesn't come in contact with the inside of the building. So that's the essence of that thermal break there. Are there any more questions in regards to that energy efficiency in a nutshell in half an hour? Because I think it's about understanding those principles and how they work in concert, and thinking about that.
I got a question.
Yes.
I noticed that in MapView there's the energy efficiency for the particular house. It's a 6-star energy. It's how to rate that house.
Yeah.
Evaluate the house is the 6-star.
Yeah. So there are energy rating tools. I'm not sure what's currently being used at the moment. You have to be certified to use one of those energy rating tools to determine the energy rating. So it's a computer program that you put all of the information about the house into that computer program, and then it tells you whether you meet that 6-star energy rating or not. Some building designers have accreditation for using that software, and they do all that in-house. Other people need to send that off to a specific energy rater to get ratings done. What can happen in that scenario, like a private certifier, you send it off, and they go, it's not quite there, but if we add low E glazing to these bits, or we add some shading to these bits, or if you specify curtains, then it does meet the 6-star energy rating. So it's about a computer program that assesses that. What there is on No, it's not in this one here. On the learn site, have it here, and then in industry and standards. No, oh, maybe it was in this folder. No. What was in that? There. There is actually an Excel calculator. Passive design principles and under general principles, you've got this star rating assessor's guide, and it's a guide only. This is set up to be similar to one of the energy rating tools. So to meet that 6-star energy rating, and if you click on any building site around South Australia, it's going to say you have to meet a 6-star energy rating for it. If you put all of your information about the building into here, so you go, do I have 75% to 100% of my living areas on the north side of the house? If that's yes, well then I can put 10 in here and 10 in there. And then we put all of our results into there, and that at the end it sums it all up, and you can work out what star energy rating you get. So that doesn't constitute an energy rating. You can't supply that to council to say, yes, I've got 6 stars per this, but it gives you a guide as to whether you're going to meet that by an energy rating. So you can muck around with this first before you spend your money and your design goes to an energy rater for that rating. And these energy rating tools are not perfect by any means. They are, how do I say it? They're a way of doing a general assessment which works for most buildings, but it's not always correct. You can be designing buildings that are very comfortable, but through doing the analysis on this, they don't stack up very well, and vice versa. You can do a building which is not particularly comfortable, but it will stack up in this. So it's not perfect by any means, but it's that broad brush approach to providing a basic standard for something, and it works fairly well for your standard residential development. So have a play with that, have a look into that as well. Did that answer your question really well? Okay, in regards to next week, we've got the client consult. So I'll just
Next week or Wednesday?
Oh, sorry, yeah, Wednesday. Sorry, next session. So in regards to Wednesday in a couple of days' time, we've got the client consult. And also building designer consult that day as well. So consultation opportunity for students to clarify aspects of drawings required and reports obtained. So first up, you can talk to me as if I'm the client, and you can say, look, yeah, I want to clarify these particular aspects with you. These are the sort of things I've identified. These are some issues you might have, and so on, all that sort of stuff. And then later on, put on my building designer's hat, and you can come to me and you go, oh, you've sent me through this report and that report and that report. Can I get some clarification on those particular things? So it's your chance to get clarification on any of those aspects. So tonight and tomorrow, it's about thinking about those questions you want to ask during that. So thank you very much, and thanks for your patience for today's ad hoc class and lesson.
Oh, they've locked me into that.
Oh, also in regards to last week's thing, so everybody did pretty well. You've had a couple things to add. You'll see that on your thing,
Yeah.
and yeah, but that should be really simple. It should be just like I do that, and then
No worries.
send another sheet through. And should not take you too long. So thanks for that.
I just whipped this through to you now.